Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're finally getting a look at the new Transformers War for Cybertron Earthrise Voyager class Thrust. Thrust is a Target exclusive and has, up to this point, been relatively elusive to collectors. Personally, I got mine from an online pre-order with Target, and they finally decided to, grace me with this figure after multiple delays, but here we are. And with Thrust in hand, this makes the final, not only Earthrise Seeker, but final numbered Earthrise toy in my collection, which means we can finally complete that Galactic map. So, I'll definitely be taking some time to assemble that, put it together, and we can finally get a good look at the completed thing. Of course, just like my other reviews, we'll be taking a look at Thrust's packaging. We'll open it up, we'll see his individual map piece before we look at the whole map. We'll see Thrust instructions, and we'll see Thrust himself in both his vehicle and robot modes. I promised you guys that we'd be doing a big group shot today with all of our War for Cybertron Seekers, so not just the Earthrise guys, but any of the miscellaneous Seekers that were Siege only. So, I tend to have a lot of fun with this one. And then, of course, at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So Thrust, he comes in your standard Earthrise Voyager packaging, with the exception of getting the call out to the Cybertronian villain subline, which is basically the banner under which Target places all of their Decepticon or Decepticon-aligned characters when they get their exclusives, and it's spanned from Earthrise to Cyberverse. Thrust is officially number 26 in the Earthrise line, so even though he's dropping super late into 2020 or even in 2021, was actually, pretty early in the line. So he has been the missing piece to a lot of people's Galactic map puzzles for a while now. We go ahead and turn him. You get this artwork of Thrust flying around in his vehicle mode, and this looks like it's either taken directly from or based around the battle scene that was shared between the two Amazon exclusives, which were the Prowl and Ironhide 2-pack and the Dirge and Ramjet 2-pack. As you can see, Dirge and Ramjet flying off in the distance there. So that's interesting. Unfortunately, the pictures don't actually line up. It's like different shots from the same battle, but still kind of cool for that consistency. Go ahead, turn it around here. You get your renders of Thrust in his vehicle and robot modes. It takes 23 steps to transform. And he's listed as being part of the Seeker Elite team, which is fitting because the 2-pack that contained Ramjet and Dirge was called Seeker Elites, so it all works out. And then, of course, on this side, you get your standard Earthrise side panel. All right, here's our included map piece. Take our handy-dandy little decoder. You find text here. Now, half of this is very obscured by the flight paths, and it took me a minute to figure it out, but pretty positive this says Nexus 0, which is not a location I'm familiar with, unless they're talking about like the Nexus, like the Transtech thing from the club, maybe? I don't know. Not sure what Nexus 0 is supposed to be. And I guess that's it right there. Very busy little map piece, all sorts of travel lines and stuff going around. I think this looks like Cybertron, I'm pretty sure. So, our long-awaited final piece at least isn't like a boring dud. You actually get stuff on here. Okay, so now that I have this, I'll take the time to assemble the entire Galactic map, and we'll show that off.
Okay, now here it is. Spent quite a few hours putting this together, but you can see I've got all the map pieces adhered to this little backboard, and it's inside a nice little frame. And as you can see, there's a lot of gaps between some of the pieces, and that's because, when you cut these things out by hand, you can never really predict the exact measurements, everything you're going to need. You're just kind of cutting along the dotted lines. So not everything lines up perfectly, and that's a shame, but if you're patient, you kind of start in one corner and just work your way out, you can get it all to at least, mostly line up. Now, for anyone that doesn't know, there are a lot of printing errors on these map pieces. And show some good examples here. So, kind of lighten the way. It's going to be. So you got this planet, right? Obviously, it's put together, right? All the pieces. And then you get these lines on this piece that kind of go nowhere because they're just pointless extra lines, and they say Junkion on them. And that Junkion mistake actually pops up in like 3 or 4 different places, right? So here is the actual planet Junkion right there. But then you also get a Junkion here. You get a Junkion there. You get one up here. Like, I don't know how that happened. It's really bizarre. And you get a few other instances of lines just not really connecting like they should. Plus the Skylinks piece is just all kinds of jacked up, and it's kind of like somebody took the image and then like just rotated it about like 45 degrees or so. So there's a lot of problems. It's not going to be perfect no matter what you do, but it is really cool to see. This is that big piece that came with Scorponok that was like kind of a key. Also has the planet, or not the planet, but it has Unicron on it. Gives you a key of the different like flight paths. Don't know how well you can see that, but basically Space Bridge, the Ark, the Nemesis, Quintessons, and the Fool's Fortune, which has got to be the Mercenaries. So that explains the little red travel lines. But yeah, you get all sorts of planets on here. You get Char, you get, what is that? Paradron, Biosphera, Gigantian, not Junkion, Empty Space, Botropolis, home of the GoBots, Dominus, there's Cybertron right in the middle. Down here you get Nebulon Station, Quintessa. Here is an opening to the Dead Universe, and it seems like there's 2, right? Because this also says Dead Universe, but it's not like the same exact lines, and it just seems like 2 rifts to the Dead Universe in different places. So that's interesting. And over here you get our solar system, which contains the planet Earth. You get Micron. You get is it Aquatron, Velocitron. That says Caminus right there, though I don't think that is Caminus. I'm not really sure what that is. This, I think, is the real Caminus. So you can see how it's kind of a double print of those lines there. So one of these is Caminus, one's not. So I'm not sure what the extra planet is. And then you also get the little planet Antilla right there. So there's a lot going on in this map, and for all of its flaws, it's still something that's really cool to have and makes a great collector piece. So if you had the money and the patience to collect all of Earthrise, this is your reward. Okay, here we get our instruction book for Thrust now. And it's got this render room on the front, oddly wielding his null rays in his hands, which, I mean, you can do it, it just always looks weird to me. This shows you how to detach his null rays, I guess, in case you need to know how to do that. And then you get the transformation from robot to futuristic or sci-fi type jet. Now, his transformation, because of his wing placement, is actually more similar to the standard Seekers than the other Coneheads, because his wings are actually on like his torso part and not his legs. So it just alters things a little bit. And then, yeah, your how-to on the map piece, which we never need to know how to do that again, huh? Because we are done. Here we get Thrust Vehicle Mode, and you can see it's done up in this dark red, nice sleek black, and this like really dark silver color. It's got Decepticon symbols on the inner sides of both of his wings on the top. Nothing on the bottom. That's okay. He does get them on the undersides of his tail fins, though, so that's interesting. What do you call it? Stabilizers, right? Try to sound like I know what I'm talking about. It's got the usual orange cockpit that all the Earthrise guys have. Got black null rays. Looks like the undersides of his VTOL fans are black. No, they're still dark silver. They're just in shadow right there. So cool. They're painted on both sides. A very colorful kneecaps here with this interesting, like, light purple color that doesn't appear. Well, I mean, I guess it's the same purple used for the Decepticon logo, so it's somewhere. We got this cool gold and like red or orange here on the top of the air intakes. Overall, he just looks really, really neat and looks a lot more flight capable than his 2 Conehead buddies. Speaking of his 2 buddies, we have the other Coneheads here. You get Ramjet and Dirge from the Amazon exclusive 2-pack.
And these guys look really, really cool flying together. You can see they all have their unique body styles and everything. And I gotta say, Thrust by far just looks the most coherent. He's the only one that doesn't look like he would nosedive when trying to fly. So I think he's gotta be my favorite, at least when it comes to the jet mode. I think his jet mode is so cool because it looks like an actual functional jet, but it's got the vertical takeoff and landing, so, you know, I mean, he can, like, fly straight up and then just take off, which is really neat. Plus, his red and black colors are just really, really cool. They're actually kind of the same as Ramjet's, only without the excessive white all over it. Here's a quick comparison with the Transformers Classics mold, because unlike Dirge, I actually do have the Classics version of Thrust. And these two are quite different from one another. I mean, they get the same general ideas down, but the proportions are way, way different. This guy's wings and turbines are a lot bigger, but his stabilizers are a lot smaller. This guy's huge stabilizer on the back. And he's got a much longer and honestly more realistic nose cone. So he definitely takes the cake as far as just realism and honestly overall aesthetic. This Thrust is very, very burgundy. He's almost brown, and I don't really dig it. I like the more red colors. And here, as promised, is the complete War for Cybertron Seeker Armada. That is until they inevitably come out with some new Seekers and just force me to do this all over again. I swear, by the time I'm done reviewing all these guys, like, they're going to start falling apart from how many times I've transformed them. So, for the uninitiated, in the back row, you get Thundercracker, Starscream, and Skywarp. In the middle, start with this red guy, you get Redwing, the new Sandstorm, Hotlink from the Netflix series, and Ion Storm here. And kind of coming around this bend, you get Acid Storm, Ramjet, Thrust, Dirge, and Nova Storm. So you can see in their vehicle modes, these guys come in all different shapes and sizes. You have standard F-15 type jets, you get more fictional type jets or prototype jets here, and then you get alien Tetrajets. So it looks like, you know, kind of a grab bag of different types of aircraft. You could always substitute Earthrise, Thundercracker, Starscream, and Skywarp for their Siege counterparts if you want more Tetrajets. That's up to you. Personally, I'm opting to use the most recent version of each character. But it's your collection, so display them however you'd like. Okay, now we come to Thrust Robot Mode. And he's got the same overall look that's shared with the other Conehead Seekers. Biggest difference being the tail fins coming off his legs, which are immovable, so they always stick out to the side, and then his very unique wing setup. Now his wings are a bit different from the others because they'll come up on the hinge, but they stay with like the tapered area pointing up, so they hang lower on his back, and that's to help give the illusion that they're, you know, kind of sort of attached to his legs. It's kind of weird because, yeah, the original like animation model and everything had these on his legs, but it doesn't really make sense that way. So it's kind of their happy medium, and, you know, it allows for a lot more posability and everything. Now you can, if you want to, bring these down, if that's something that you want to see. Is an option for you. If you want them to rest a little bit lower on his body, which will put him a bit closer to, you know, the standard old school configuration. You can even straighten the wings out if you want to get really old school. You can also, if you'd like, completely flip these up, more in line with the standard Seekers. So you can give them much higher wings. This actually also looks a lot like his Classics toy. The downside is that the wings aren't molded to fold back this way, so they're stuck being straight out. So you got a few options. It's up to you, you know, how you want to display them. Personally, I'm just going with the default because I just like the way it looks. May not be completely G1 accurate, but sometimes accurate's not always the best route, you know. His design was kind of silly to begin with, so I think this is a really good compromise for him. And he just looks really cool. Plus the fact that he's kind of pivot and everything makes his VTOLs
kind of work, you know what I mean? And help steer him around in the air. So I like him overall. He's got a pretty dark red color that's somewhere in between his original toy color and the animation model. The animation was quite a bit brighter red. Here we get him with the other Seekers Elite again, this time in the robot modes. And these guys look really cool together. They also coincidentally have a whole red, white, and blue theme going on, so I'm sure someone like Patriot Prime would really appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, these guys really do look like elite Seekers, right? You have the standard Seeker body type, and then these guys are much more specialized than that. They specialize in different types of warfare, and they do very much look like the heavies that you call in when you really need a job done. So, you know, I gotta say bravo to Hasbro. I think they did a fantastic job with all three of these guys. I will reiterate, I'm still not super crazy about the fact that they used the fake cone heads, because maybe the one criticism I have about these guys is that their heads look really small for their bodies, and you could have alleviated that by just somehow utilizing the actual cockpit. I mean, it can be done, right? We did it on the Classics toys. Well over a decade later, I'm sure we can engineer it to work, but you know, that damage has already been done with the first use of this mold, so I'm not gonna, you know, dock the toy much for that. All right, here's one last look at our Classics or Generations Thrust, just so you can see how much these two really differ in their robot modes. Again, the color palette is quite different between the two of them. Instead of black and red, you get burgundy and like a really dark brownish gray. This is the wing configuration I was talking about, where they're flipped up and they sit a lot higher on his back. Again, you can always mimic that if you want, if you like the way that looks. And I've said before with these, you know, new Seekers, the Classics molds were really great for their time, and they ended up being stand-ins for your go-to Seekers for a very, very long time. But I do think we can officially retire these molds now as our quintessential G1 Seekers. And this guy kind of rounds it off. You know, now that we have him, we have all the different variations of the Seeker design. At least ones outside of like club exclusives. And even though these toys aren't perfect, and there were some improvements that could have been done, they're still a lot better than what we had. I just think the proportions are way better, except maybe the head being a little small for the cone heads. The extra posability is great. More stable, they have a much higher articulation count, and they're bigger, right? They scale a lot better with your modern figures than these little deluxe class ones from, what, 2006, I think? So yeah, I think it's safe to say that the new toys are definitely an improvement over what's come before. All right, and here, finally, is our look at the entire Seeker Armada in their robot forms. And this way they're a bit more uniform because they are designed based off of the same, you know, cartoon design. So the whole group looks a little more coherent here. The biggest differences are obviously the cone heads in front, who get, you know, a completely different wing shape. They got the little fake nose cones on the top of their heads. And, you know, I gotta say, this is pretty cool. We're getting to the point, we're not quite there, but we're almost there, where we have as many Seekers in War for Cybertron, or, you know, different Seekers, as we did from the Classics mold. So we're not 100% there, because, you know, the Classics mold had all those, like, club exclusives and stuff. Still waiting on a Bitstream, Sunstorm, Nacelle. But on the plus side, we do have Red Wing and we do have Sandstorm, so we're like, what are we, one away from having just as many? And then if we get really lucky, we can get the ones that we're still missing. So yeah, this is really cool. I'm excited to be able to do this. It's very heavily rumored that we have one more Tetrajet Seeker on the way, at least one more from Netflix, and that's going to be a Sparkless Seeker. It's really like a rusted, zombified one. I'm not going to pull out the whole shebang for that when it happens, because it's just a nameless, you know, background character. Might use one or two other Tetrajets to compare it. But if we get any more named characters down the road, I'll definitely be looking forward to displaying those with all these guys. And that just about concludes our review of the new Earthrise Thrust.
I think it's safe to say that possibly outside of Masterpiece, this is the best Thrust toy we've ever received. And I know he's a pain to get because they decided to make him a Target exclusive, which, coupled with the fact that the other two Coneheads were a very hard to find Amazon exclusive that I don't think was ever restocked, yeah, a lot of people are going to be a bit salty about this, and I don't blame them. I got lucky and managed to get these. I jumped on the pre-order for the other two, and then I pre-ordered this guy, and he eventually showed up. What Target's deal is there? I honestly think they lost some of the thrust at sea. I've heard rumors that a lot of mail went bye-bye in the ocean, and I think the thrusts were part of that, at least the initial shipment. I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling, just based on the repeated delays. Anyway, I love this guy. I think he looks utterly fantastic. I think he really improves upon the old 80s design, which honestly wasn't very practical, let's say. Having those big wings sticking off of your thighs, it just doesn't really work. So I really like this dude. I'm happy we got him. And if you're looking to complete your Seekers, or you just want at least one of the Coneheads, well, he'll be a lot easier to find than the other two, that's for sure. So I would start, stalking around your local Targets. I know online he's been coming in and out of stock. So if you want to kind of bookmark his listing and just keep checking, if you really want this dude, I'm sure you can find him. And I think he's just a great toy. And if you do end up getting him, I think you'll like him a lot. Of course, that's just my take on Thrust. Now I want to know what you all think of this toy. Do you think he's worth all the hassle of trying to obtain? Are you satisfied with the figure, or are there things you'd like to see changed on it? Any and all feedback's always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. And thank you for joining me for this look at the new Target exclusive Tformers Earthrise Thrust. And with all that said, I will see you next time.